Hello everyone, my name is Sukesh Marla and in this video we will talk about Angular unit testing. We have used this word unit testing many times in our previous courses, but if you are directly coming to Angular and if you are not at all aware about the word unit testing, then unit testing means testing every smallest unit of the application in an automated and isolated manner. In the definition, we have used two important words. One, automated, and second, isolated. Let's understand the meaning of word automated. Let's talk about two simple approaches. Approach number one. A developer is asked to do a small functionality in a particular application. So he will simply go and write some code. Then he will execute the application. He will test the application in a manual way and confirm that his application is working in an expected way. Now the reality. Later in the future, some other developer will be asked to do some small changes in that particular block of code. Now he will do the changes and he will simply rerun the application and he will just confirm that his changes are there in place. Practically, he should not only test his changes, but he also have to confirm that all the previous functionalities are still working in a correct way. But unfortunately, maybe because of time constraints or maybe because of lack of knowledge, he won't do it. And ultimately, it will affect the quality of our code. Now, as a solution, in approach 2, developer will write down the application code and after that, instead of executing application, he will simply write down second code referred as testing code or unit testing code. This unit testing code will test the application code on behalf of us and confirm the correctness of functionality. Now, later in the future, when some other developer is asked to do some changes in application code, once the changes are done, he or she will simply re-execute the testing code and confirm the correctness of the existing behavior. And that's the advantage of automated testing. Now let's understand the second word, isolated. Isolated means independent. We have to write each unit test case in an independent manner. That means every unit test will be independent of every other unit test. It will make sure that unit test code, whatever developer will write, will be very simple and don't require any kind of special testing. And that's what the complete definition of unit testing is. Unit testing means testing every smallest unit of the application in an automated and isolated manner. So now I think you understood the basic definition of unit testing. Now let's get into coding and let's understand more. Now for Angular unit testing, the first thing we will be required is Jasmine framework. Jasmine is an open source framework specially meant for JavaScript unit testing. You can simply download it from this URL github.com/jasmine/releases. Simply click on this Jasmine standalone.zip file and once it's downloaded, simply extract it and it will look like this. It will have some folders called lib, spec and source and one HTML file called spec runner. Switch to Visual Studio. In Visual Studio, we have one very simple project created called Angular testing, which is completely empty right now. And then let's back to our download folder where we have the extracted version of our Jasmine project, Jasmine folder. Simply copy that folder and simply put it inside our ASP.NET project. Say paste. Simply expand this Jasmine folder. This mit.license file will not have any benefit, so simply go and delete it. It's just a file which contain the licensing information. We are not required to bother about it. Simply go and delete it. Now this spec runner.html. Now it's nothing but this is going to be our test runner. Now test runner is nothing but something using which we will execute our tests. If you understood the concept, then it's good. If you won't understood what is mean by test runner, then simply relax. As we move further, it will get very easy for you. Next is this lib folder, which contain some JS and CSS files, which are referred inside this specrunner.html. These files contain common methods which we will use for creating test methods. You are not required to bother about any of those files. All of those files are already referenced inside our specrunner.html file. Other than lib folder, you will notice two more folders here, spec and src folder. Now, src folder is a simple folder which is used to keep your JavaScript files. Normally, all the JavaScript files which contain logics which are supposed to be tested will be placed inside this source folder, and all the files which contain test methods which will test logics written inside files placed inside this source folder will be placed inside this spec folder. Now this is just a recommendation. Jasmine says all the files which contain logic which is supposed to be tested must be placed inside this source folder, and all the test files must be placed inside this spec folder. But it is just a recommendation. Every company follow their own recommendation, own standards. And as you can see, this spec folder and source folder is not empty right now. It contains some files. They are nothing but they are simple sample files which contain some sample example which we can use it for our reference. But in real time, they don't have any benefit. So in real time, we simply go and delete them. So let's go and delete these two files. Right click, say delete, okay. Right click and say delete and okay. Now for our example, for our video, we will not follow completely Jasmine standard. We will definitely go and create our test files inside this spec folder, but we will not create our source files which are going to contain logic inside this source folder. Definitely we will go and create an independent folder for them called script inside the root folder. So let's name it as scripts. Before we get into Angular testing, first let's do a small JavaScript testing. Simply right click this script folder, say add new item, and then select JavaScript file from this dialog box and name it as maths.js. This file is going to contain all the logics related to maths. So let's create one simple function called add, which will accept two parameters, x and y, and it will simply return x plus y. Return x plus y semicolon. Now as I said in the beginning, we will go and create test file for this maths.js in this spec folder. So simply right click, say add new item, again JavaScript file. We will name this file as maths spec. In Jasmine world, tests are called as specs. So we'll name it as maths specs.js. Say add. In the beginning, we will invoke describe method, which is a part of Jasmine framework. Describe, which will accept two parameters. One, I will say maths tests, and second, a callback function. Now describe function will be used to create a group of tests. Inside this callback function, we will invoke it method. Here we will say must return sum, and again it will accept two parameters. Second is going to be a callback function. Enter. Now semicolon, done. Now each time we call one it method, it will be considered as one test method. So we can put it like this: it must return sum of two integers or whatever. Then we can have one more test method which will return sum of two floats, sum of one integer, one float, etc., etc. So we will go and create more than one test method, and we will group all of them using describe method. So simple, using describe method we will create test group, and using it method we will create individual tests. Now inside this callback function we will invoke expect method, And inside expect method, we will invoke add method. Remember, we have created this add method inside maths.js file. And we'll pass two parameters, 5 and 6. Expect the output of this add function to be 11 and semicolon. Now basically it means expect the return value of this add method to be 11. If because of some reason, if it won't return level, then the test will simply fail. Next step will be modifying this specrunner.html file. Here you will notice that there are two sections given, one to include source files and one to include spec files. So by default, they have included player and song, which is not there right now. So simply go and remove them. Simply go and remove these files as well, and simply drag your maths.js file in source section and mathspec.js file in the spec section. Next, simply set this specrunner.html as startup page and execute the project. And you can see that it says we have one spec. Yes, we have one spec because we have executed it method only once, and that spec method is inside maths test group. Yes, it is inside maths test group, and right now our test method successfully completed because we are expecting 11 and we are actually getting 11. Now let's do one thing. Let's simply go to maths.js and let's change this x plus y to x minus y. Save it, simply say refresh, and it says test failed because we are expecting 11 and we got -1. So you can easily see that using Jasmine, or I should say using unit test, how you can improve the productivity of your logic. Every time something gets changed inside the logic, simply go and rerun the test and get a confirmation that new changes didn't affected the old functionality. So it's that simple. In the next example, we will understand how to do unit testing of our Angular code using Jasmine. Now definitely to test Angular, first we have to write some Angular code. So we will be required AngularJS file. So stop the execution, right click the project, say manage NuGet packages and search for Angular. Click on this AngularJS core, say install. Say close again, say install again. Sometime because of maybe internet connectivity, you may get some error in NuGet packages. Just ignore and try to install it again and it will get resolved. Now in order to do Angular testing, we will be required angular-mock.js along with angular.js. Now you will get angular-mock.js as soon as you download AngularJS from NuGet. Don't worry about angular.mock right now. First let's go and create simple AngularJS file. Right click new item and we will call it as Angular for testing. I know it's very big name but more descriptive. And as usual, the first line of Angular, that is creating module or application. So I will say where my app is equal to angular.module. Now guys, many people find it difficult to write Angular code without having proper intelligence. Now just a small trick in Visual Studio. In case if you are writing some Angular code inside an independent JavaScript file, and if you are expecting to get intelligence, then it's very simple. You have to simply drag AngularJS file into your external JavaScript file and you will immediately start getting intelligence. It's just a trick but a very useful trick. So the name of the application will be my application and the second parameter will be simply empty square brackets. After that we will create controller inside this module, my app dot controller. The name of the controller will be my controller comma function semicolon, and we will be required $scope here. Then I will say simple $scope dot number 1 equal to let's say 5 by default. If you want, you can keep it as 0, doesn't matter. And then I will say dollar scope dot number 2 is equal to 0, and then I will say dollar scope dot, sorry, my mistake, dot add new, I'll say function, and inside this function I'll simply say, yeah, before that let's declare one more variable dot total, which is again going to be 0, and then I will say dollar scope dot total is equal to dollar scope dot number 1 plus dollar scope dot number 2. Now in usual scenarios, once we are done with the Angular code, we will go and create UI with 2 text boxes, each of which will be attached to this number 1 and number 2 using ng model directive, and then one button which will be attached with click event to this add new functionality. There will be some way using which we will display this total in our UI. But we are learning Angular testing, so we will test this Angular code without creating UI. So let's go and create one spec file in our spec folder. Right click, add new item. I will say Angular spec.js file, say add, then go to specrunner.html file. Simply in the source section drag Angular for testing.js, and then in mathspec.js section simply drag mathspec.js file. Now remember guys, in order to work with this Angular for testing file properly, it is very important that you drag angular.js file before Angular for testing.js. And as I said in the beginning, in order to do Angular testing, we will be required angular-mock.js along with angular.js. So let's drag angular.mock.js as well. We'll talk about this angular.mock.js soon. Oh, sorry, wrong file. It should not be mathspec.js, it should be angularspec.js. Now let's go and write down our testing code. So as usual, the first step will be invoking describe method. So let's do that. Describe. So I will say describe the Angular test group or whatever you want to call it, and say comma, one callback function, semicolon. Now inside this callback function we will invoke it method, and we will say Angular must return sum, and then a callback function once again. Now just like before, we will execute or invoke execute method inside this callback method, but this time we will write a little bit weird code. We will say scope dot total to be 11. Now in order to get this total, first we need scope, and we will get this scope from my controller, and my controller is present inside this my application. Now as per the rules in Angular, as per the working of Angular, this application get loaded into the memory when Angular compiler find ng app directive. But in current situation, we don't have HTML at all. That means we don't have ng app directive. That means there is no way to load this my application into memory. And this is where Angular-mock come to picture. It will let us load application to memory without having HTML. Angular mock let us mock many things, and one of them is mocking HTML, using which we will load application into memory. So it's very simple. I will say let's go and copy the name, that is better. So my application, and done. Next we will be required an instance of controller. Now in order to get controller instance, we will be required a special service called controller constructor, and in order to get handled to that service, we will be using or we will be invoking a function called inject. Now inject function will take one callback function as parameter. So let's do it. Now the specialty about this callback function is it will be a injectable callback function. That means Angular will loop through all the parameters and it will see if there is a corresponding service available in its registry. For example, let's say if I put X here, then what Angular will do is Angular will search its registry and see if there is a service available with name X. If it is, then it will simply initialize that service and it will make it available to us as X. Now in our case, we are interested in controller constructor service, which is available inside Angular as $controller service. So simply put $controller and Angular will initialize this $controller for us automatically. Next, we will make our control execute by using this $controller service. So we'll say $controller and we have to provide the name of our controller, that is my controller. So let's put it here, my controller, and then comma, we have to pass a JavaScript object where we will specify each and everything which is required for our controller. In our case, our controller need only $scope. So we will provide only $scope. There is a small typo here, so let's correct it. It should be scope E. So what we'll do is we'll say $scope colon, we have to provide a JavaScript object here. So what we will do is we'll simply create one simple variable here called scope, because we are using scope here. So I'll say scope equal to a simple JavaScript object and we will assign this scope object here simply. So it will make our controller execute. Now just to demonstrate that this $controller service actually create instance of controller, what I'll do is I'll simply re-execute my application and I will simply open developer tools in Chrome by pressing F12 in my keyboard and then go to sources tab, then simply double click Angular spec.js from spec folder, put breakpoint into this $controller statement, and I will put one more breakpoint in this statement, that is a line after this $controller. Then I'll go to my script folder, I'll double click this Angular for testing.js, I'll put breakpoint here. And now I will say refresh. You will see that breakpoint is here. Remember, at this moment my controller instance didn't got created. Okay, it will created when this $control function get executed. So if you check the scope right now, you will see that it is completely empty right now. I'll say simply F5 and my controller instance got created. I'll press F5 again. So my $controller execution completes, and if you go and check the scope variable now, you will see that it actually contain number1, number2, total and add new function. So it proves that $controller service actually create instance of controller. So now let's continue with our practical. Close the browser and simply assign value to number1 as 5, dot number2 equal to 6, and simply invoke dot add new function. Refresh. Now let's go and simply refresh the browser, or let's re-execute the application, and you can see that now we have two specs and both of them get filled. See, the first one, it is expected because the previous test, if you remember, maths test, right, it was returning -1. So let's correct it. So make it plus again, so that will get passed now. And if you just scroll, you will see that execute is not defined. That means our second test also get failed, and reason for that is execute is not defined. Let's go to Visual Studio and let's go to Angular spec.js. You will see that here I am invoking execute method. It was a typo. So we should say expect. Now Control S. I'll go to my browser once again. I'll simply say refresh. You will see that two specs, one from maths test group, one from Angular test group, both of them get passed successfully. Now just to confirm once again, what I'll do is I'll go to my Angular for testing.js. I'll simply put minus. I'll say save, refresh, and now you can see that expected -1, Angular test group, Angular must return sum. It's failed because we are expecting 11 and we got -1. So this is all about Angular testing, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any question, please free to mail to questpond@questpond.com. Thank you very much.